Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
April 2, 2020, the Employment Relations Edition. We start with 2 stories, which really are bookends of the title for today's episode. First up is the Wall Street Journal, which reports that U.S. plants are emerging as coronavirus battlegrounds. For the compliance practitioner, the question is, what happens when an organization intentionally puts workers in harm's way around coronavirus? You can't say it's negligence because the knowledge of coronavirus is widespread, and this has caused tensions to be breaking out between employers and workers as companies push to keep producing during the pandemic. Obviously, employees are beginning to push or worry about their health concerns, but now they're beginning to push back. In the recent days, we've seen employees walk off the jobs at companies as wide and varying as Purdue Farms, to the soda maker Refresh Co., and other companies have had workers petition for more sick leave, a clear problem now. Companies are really taking advantage of workers during this crisis, and it's going to be interesting to see how all of this might play out. The bookend to the first story comes from the Washington Post, which reports as the coronavirus spreads, so do reports of companies mistreating workers. And this is where employees are not given protective masks or other personal protective gear to wear. They're told that they can't wear the personal protective gear in common areas or general population areas. This is a big problem at hospitals where hospitals are trying to hide how much coronavirus is actually present in the hospital by not allowing physically not allowing employees to wear personal protective gear and masks in areas other than the coronavirus ward. So we're beginning to see places like the Federal Bureau of Prisons have to change their work policies because of employees who take routine, non-prescription medical pain medications such as Advil, Tylenol, or Motrin, and now were originally turned away from work, but now the Federal Bureau of Prisons has rescinded that order. And it's just, from the compliance perspective, the entire sense of institutional justice needs to be continued throughout the employment life cycle, and that's really on compliance. Another story comes from the Kennedy Center, which received $25 million in CARES money and immediately furloughed all employees. The optics of this are obviously horrendous, and it points to another issue which companies are increasingly finding themselves damaging themselves reputationally for their ill-advised and totally tone-deaf responses. And to receive that kind of money and then lay out everybody claiming you need the money for other purposes is just inane in this situation. And finally, from the Wall Street Journal, an article about the difficulty auditors are finding in the coronavirus crisis around remote work. Obviously, auditing is something you typically do on site, but now auditors are finding that they need to, of course, continue to do routine and extraordinary audits, but they need to do so off-site because of travel and health restrictions. So challenges for the audit industry as well going forward. I am proud to announce a new podcast premiering this week on the Compliance Podcast Network. It's Compliance and Coronavirus. I wanted to bring some clarity and sanity to the compliance practitioner around coronavirus. So for the next foreseeable future, at least 8 weeks, I'll be podcasting Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of each week on a topic related to coronavirus, COVID-19. Check it out with the Daily Compliance News.